Hey guys, welcome. And nothing better than having financials right after lunch. And I wish I could tell you that I lost my voice doing something really awesome, like singing karaoke or, screaming, because we were so excited over the hurricane yesterday. But no, it's just like a routine, run of the mill crap. So excuse my language, but hopefully you'll be able to bear with me. This is fun. I will promise that I will make numbers as much fun as I can for this session. So hopefully you'll have fun with it. So we're going to talk about financials, but as we get into this, I'm going to tell you that we're going to cover some really interesting things. I like to make some financials simple, right? Because how many of you love financials? How many of you love numbers? One or two, okay. The good news is you're not alone. But how many of you know, raise your hand, how many of you know you should like your numbers, that in order to be profitable, in order to improve your business, you really need to know them, right? Okay, good, because that means we're on the same page. Look, I want to cover things. I want to talk about intentional growth. Now you say, wait a minute, I'm supposed to simplify numbers, right? Well, why am I going to talk about growth? Let me ask you a question. There's two things you can do in business, okay? You can grow or you can retract. What happens if you stand still? Has anybody ever stopped your car on the interstate? Seriously, in the middle of the interstate? There is no parking in business, okay? You try to stand still in business, you're going to get run over, right? So in business, you're always doing one of two things. You're either growing or you're retracting, and retracting is not fun. Has anyone ever been in a situation where you had to retract your business or downsize? It's not fun, is it? Why? Because, when you're retracting, you may have great employees, and you may actually have to tell somebody that you really like that you don't have work for them, or you don't have a spot for them. Is that fun? But you know what is fun? Why is growing fun? Because what do you get to do? You get to hire people. Now, I think hiring terrifies some of you guys. I know from coaching people over 30 years, it seems to. But the bottom line is that you need to think about hiring like this. It's like shopping. Okay, you're shopping. You're out shopping to add really cool people to your organization. You're out shopping to add new capacity and new ideas to your organization. That's what you're doing. So I like hiring because to me, it's like shopping. And it's awesome. So we're going to talk about intentional growth. We're going to talk about what numbers are important, right? I'm trying to drill this down to a few numbers that are really important to you. We'll talk about why every contractor, every business should choose the scale and making the numbers work for you. We'll talk about some questions. Talk a little bit about me. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I'll just give you a quick background. For many of you who don't know this, I grew up in what most people would consider a small town, but if you're in North Dakota, it's a big town. It's called Grand Forks. It's like 60,000. So I grew up in North Dakota. How many of you actually know anybody from North Dakota? And my South Dakota peeps can't talk about? Yeah, a few people. The bottom line is that most of you don't know anyone from North Dakota. And I moved to Texas as quick as I could because you know what? It's cold in North Dakota. It can be very cold. And I don't mind the cold, but I don't like being cold. And my mother's family was from Texas, so it was a natural for me to move down to Texas. I ended up going to Texas A&M University, and I'd love to tell you I was like this honor student, and I did great things and graduated in like 3 years, but I didn't. It took me like 11. Okay, and I also ran out of drink tickets while I was there, just so you know. But if you'd asked me when I was in high school what I wanted to do, I rarely gave a positive, affirmative goal like I want to be this, I usually say, I don't know anything but business. Seriously, that's what I say. So I'd say, I didn't really understand what business was. But interestingly, I had started working for McDonald's when I was in high school, and I didn't bother to quit or get fired. And I kept working for McDonald's when I was in college. And guess what McDonald's is? It's business. And I learned, I kind of like this stuff. So eventually I get a degree in management, which is business, and actually end up getting an MBA at some point. But, it was interesting because along the way, I thought I wanted to be an engineer. In fact, when I went to A&M in the beginning, I was in the engineering school. You know what I discovered very rapidly? And you're going to be really surprised by this. I don't like math. I love numbers and I love statistics, but I don't like calculus and higher level math. So I found out there's all kinds of different math out there, but I really don't like math at all. I tried to convince myself that I really loved math, but I don't. But I do like statistics and I like making money. How many of you like making money? Okay. All right. We're getting guys energized. Hey, on the personal level, just a few other things. I have 2 crazy puppies, and there's a great picture of them there. I like to travel. That picture in the upper left-hand corner is me standing on the beach at Captiva Island, which I hope is still there after yesterday. And some of you South Dakota, if the South Dakota people are in the room, you might recognize the Black Hills. And I play a little guitar too, so that's just a little bit about me. A little bit about my history. As I mentioned, I managed to go from hamburgers to home improvement. I spent, actually in my career, until last year, I spent my entire career in franchising. Starting with McDonald's, I worked there for almost 20 years, and you think, how does that apply to the painting industry, right? How does 20 years of McDonald's turn into Terra's in the painting industry? Now, I'll tell you one thing. Business is business, and there's a lot of commonality. And I didn't realize until even the last few years how much I actually learned because I ran stores and I had to run McDonald's. I mean, there's so many things that you learn, and it's amazing. But it turns out I ended up working in direct operations for about 10 years, and then I ended up in what was known as franchise development or field service, which was working with franchise owners. And I found out that I had a knack for, and I really enjoyed business coaching. And really, that's what franchising is. It's really about helping people start a business and teaching them how to run it and helping them run it better and grow and scale it. And guess what? If any of you know me, you know that's what I really love. It evolved for me into not only just, it was fun running McDonald's, but at some point I ended up changing. I stayed in franchising, but I changed roles. I changed from running hamburgers to haircuts, actually, sport clips, and then ended up in the trades. It was a company called Enhanced Wood Renewal. We did cabinet and floor refinishing. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, this is such a great business. There's so much money to be made in the trades. I mean, I had slaved for years trying to get single-digit bottom line in fast food, and you're happy to do that. Like, oh gosh, we had 8% bottom line. That was amazing. And I get it to Enhance, and I'm like 30% bottom line. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a great business model. So anyway, fast forward, I end up somewhere along the line. I actually ran some independent restaurants, so I've owned businesses. But I get to Fresh Coat. We'll just get to that. Sorry, I'm bad. So how did I get to Fresh Coat and then to here? So about 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to come back into the trades, and I got into being president of Fresh Coat, which is painting. I was so happy to be back in the trades. It was great, and I had that opportunity. And it was funny. So my journey to the APPC started right then, because as soon as I got to Fresh Coat, one of the things you do as a coach, one of the things you do when you're analyzing your own business is you have to look and see, where are my gaps, right? For those of you who are business owners, you ever sit down and go, where are my gaps? What do I need to fix, right? What needs to get fixed? Well, when I took over Fresh Coat, I had that. This first thing I did was I said, okay, where are our gaps? We had some systems that were amazing, and then we had some systems that were weak. And I had a choice when I saw these weak systems. I said, well, for my franchise's sake, I have to fix these systems. So we could try to fix them ourselves, or I can go buy them. I can go hire somebody who already has great systems, and we'll just incorporate them. And that's how I got introduced back then to the Academy for Professional Painting Contractors, because Brandon Lewis, if anybody knows Brandon, had great systems. And I said, okay, I want your systems. So Brandon and I worked for 2 years together. We're implementing his systems into Fresh Coat. So after we got done with that, I told my team, I said, if I ever retire from Fresh Coat, I'm going to go to work for Brandon. And so a year ago, I did that. And that's why I'm in front of you now, speaking as the Chief Operating Officer for APPC. Because I got a chance to step back. Franchising is very stressful. You're helping lots of people, and it's great. But I've realized that I wanted to stay coaching. I wanted to stay in the trades. I want to stay in painting. I love it. And so that's put me in front of you today. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate you guys being here and listening to me. And hopefully I can give you a small leg up, help you make some more money, and move forward. So, the bottom line is in 35 years, I've seen all kinds of people succeed, all different types, in different business models. I've seen people succeed in rural markets, suburban markets, urban markets. I've coached people in Canada, in Portugal, in the UK, and actually in Australia. I didn't add that one in there. I've worked with many, many, many startups, and I've worked with a single business as large as 60 million. So I've seen, and everything in between. So I've seen a lot, and that helps me. There's nothing that replaces your two best friends' trial and error and experience, right? So what does that mean? That just means that about 1,250 business owners and tons of coaching and scaling later. What I'm telling you today is not just theory. It's real practical stuff. It's practice. It's been proven. It's stuff that you can use. And so that's what I promise you. What I give you today, you can take it and use it right away. And that's what I pride myself on, is giving you something that will make a difference in your business and your life right now. We're going to do a real quick. I want to get some energy in the room real quick. So we're going to do a thing I like to call Meet the Room. So I'm going to make you all stand up. You might want to grab your stuff because I'm going to move you. All right? Now, I don't know. You guys maybe have been moving around and meeting people, but I really like to shuffle the deck. It's kind of like playing blackjack, and you see 6 decks, and we're going to shuffle them all together. That's what I'm going to do. What I want to do is I'm going to have you guys actually stand up and line up, and we're going to pick. I'll have Michael decide. Michael, I'm either going to put them in order of time, years of experience in the industry, or in the size of their business. It could be either one. What volume, revenue size. I'm guessing time in the industry might be good. What do you think? You vote. All right. So what I need you to do is I need you to talk to each other and talk about how many years have you been in painting. And I want you to line up with most years of experience over here and the least years of experience over there. And form a line like you're getting on a Southwest Airlines flight. You're all on the A list. Experience, total experience. So if you started painting at 2. All right, so most years in experience down there. But you're going to have to talk to each other to find out this so you can get in order. Hang on, I got to come down here. I got to see who my top dog is. All right, are you guys in line? You're doing all right? You got it all figured out? Pretty close. How many years of experience do you have?
Okay, I work at Worcester Brush. I'm not a painter. I'm not a business owner, but I have worked at Worcester Brush for 32 years.
32. Okay, we got 32 years down here. Shannon?
25.
25, okay.
25.
25. 22. 21. 23.
20.
I'm checking you guys just to see if you actually have figured out how to get in order.
20.
18.
16.
15. 15.
Okay, straighten out here.
13.
I'm going to make you guys do the hokey pokey next, okay?
12.
12.
Okay, we got it. I'm going to keep going. I could keep going, but we're getting the idea. There's a lot of experience in the room, right? Where do you go? 8? Where does 8 go? All right, right here. Okay, that's good. All right, now what I'm going to do is I have you count out. There's 8 tables. So we're going to start down here again, and you're going to be number 1. And go 1, 2, 3, 8. And then at 8, we're going to start over at 1, all right? And that's going to be your table number. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. 1. Okay, you got it. You guys can figure it out from here, right? 5, 6, 1, 3. Okay. 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have one job. Remember your number. Yeah. Perfect. Oh my God, you have an even number. That's impressive. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Go find your tables. Meet somebody new. All right, so in case you forgot what I was going to talk about, good job. That did improve the energy in the room. After lunch, you got to get some more energy, that's for sure. All right, so we're going to talk about these things. We're going to talk about intentional growth, whether you believe. Do you love numbers? Yeah, I changed this up a little bit. Why every contractor should choose the scale, and obviously making the numbers work for you. So do you believe? I want to know, do you believe? Do you guys believe? I want shows of hands here. Do you believe you can control the success of your business? Okay, good. That's why you're here, by the way. I hope everybody that's here believes that, and that's why you're here. Do you believe that? Do you believe you can grow in this economy? Absolutely, right? Does it matter who gets elected in November, whether you can grow? Okay, good. Because it doesn't. All right, it might change what you might do or what the rules might be, but the bottom line is you're going to grow regardless of the person elected, okay? Do you believe you can find a person who could run the business as good as you do? Yes, but I know I have coached you guys for years, and you'll say you believe this, but I don't know that you do with your whole heart. Can you find somebody that's going to run your business as good as you do? Well, maybe, maybe not, right? Can you find somebody that can run it good enough? Good enough to be good and to keep your standards up and let you get some freedom, right? Because that's the trade-off, right? Here's the thing. Do you believe if you write down a plan, you can achieve it? Okay, good. And do you believe in yourself as a leader? Okay, good. And that's what I need to hear. Good news is we all believe. All right, so we don't have any belief barriers, as I like to call them. All right, I'll just share with you, because I always share this because I love scaling. Why should you scale? Okay, number one, because you want more. How many of you want more income? Okay, you're going to have to scale. All right, just tell you, there's no way around this. Right? How many of you want more freedom? How many of you would like to work less and make more money? Okay, that's doable, by the way. All right, how many of you? Let's talk about diversification. How do you need to reduce risk by creating a company that runs without you? Okay, this is where you guys start tripping up on me, okay? Because this is why you're talking about, when we talked about earlier, you said you could find somebody that can run your company as good as you can, right? What is it? But when I coach you guys, what I hear you say is hiring somebody feels more risky than not hiring somebody. Like, how many of you are a little afraid to hire people? Be honest. Okay? How many of you think it's risky when you hire somebody? What if they don't perform? What if I hire the wrong person? What if they don't do as good a job as I think they were, right? But I want to make sure you understand something. I don't want to scare you, but you've heard me say this before. Look, I buried 8 franchise owners in 30 years, and almost every one of them, okay, had not scaled, and we had to step in and help the spouse, male and female, okay? I had female owner pass, because they weren't prepared to run that business, and that was the sole source of income for their family, okay? I've seen that. And you guys aren't thinking about that. You're thinking that hiring somebody is risky. I'm going to tell you what's risky. All your eggs being in your basket. That's what's risky. Okay, so diversifying your business by hiring people and spreading the accountability around actually reduces the risk of your business, okay? You got to start looking at it that way. That's a mindset, okay? It builds equity. Having a scaled business and having more employees and having less burden on any one person helps build the equity of the business, along with growing your list of names, which is probably the most important equity in our business. Having legacy, being able to bring family. There's a bunch of daughters in here, right? A few of you that are running your dad's business, your mom's business. This is great. I was really shocked as I was talking to you at the vendor fair how many daughters there were. This was awesome. But you're going to be able to do the same thing. Bring people. One of the most beautiful things about owning a business is you get to be a creator in this economy, right? You're creating jobs. You're taking care of families and being able to develop and bring people in. That's an amazing thing. I love that legacy. And the other most important thing is you can build an annuity. You can build a business that you can actually exit the business without selling it. Okay, and you can hire people and get people running the business for you. And that's, if you've known me, you've probably heard this story, and this goes back to my years at Comfort Keepers, but I was doing a session on planning, and I said, whatever you want to achieve with your business, you can do it. I can help you. We can put a plan in place. Yes, and how. You'll hear me say yes and how. We can do this. And right after that, one of my owners came up and said, Tara, I want to run my business from Tahiti. I was like, flat out. I wasn't even off the stage. I'm like, okay, yes, and how. Let's make that happen. And we did. We put a plan together. It was going to take 3 to 4 years for that to happen. We figured it out. But anyway, in that time frame, I ended up taking the job at Freshcoat, so I did not get to see it through. But one day I was looking at Facebook, and I realized she and her husband had bought a house in Hawaii. And I'm like, ooh. And I'm texting her. I said, what happened to Tahiti? She goes, well, we'd never been to Hawaii. And we got there, and we loved it, so we bought a house there. So they still have a business in Chicago, and they have a house in Hawaii. And they run their business 6 months out of the year from Hawaii, okay? Yes, and how. But you got to hire people to do this, by the way. You can't just like manage it from a distance, okay? So what does it take to scale, right? And I am going to get to numbers here pretty quick, I promise. I know you're just dying to go over numbers. But in order to scale, you've got to have growth. You got to have more projects and more customers. You got to have more capacity. Okay? You can't grow. It's like Mother Nature, okay? Guys, you can't fool Mother Nature. There is only so much capacity you have to run a business without other people. So you got to be able to grow. You got to have more employees. And then you need reliable processes, and that's what makes it really go, okay? That's why you can have employees, is when you have reliable processes. Okay. So what does it take? It takes understanding your numbers. Okay, I told you those numbers were coming back around. It takes understanding your numbers in the business model. It takes planning. It takes acquiring and developing resources. We like to call that people, equipment, and products, and relationships. Okay, by the way, that's true for every business. I don't care if it's Procter & Gamble or your kid's lemonade stand. People, equipment, and products are in every business. Okay. You got to execute consistent systems. You got to measure success. And you've got to move from doing to managing to leading, okay? A lot of you love this little chart. I've built this many years ago, but it is really, and there's copies of this on your table. So if you want to, hopefully there's enough. If you put your card in my little red Solo cup yesterday, I will send you electronic versions of it. But it really talks about the paint business and what it takes to grow and scale. And it simplifies it into like maybe 4. There's probably more sizes than this, but for most of us, it covers what's ahead of us. How many of you are in the first category? 0 to 500,000, solopreneur. Okay. All right. You're in one of the most challenging spots for growth. The hardest transition is from the first level to the second level. For those of you who are in the second level, how many of you agree with that? Hard moving from that first level to the second level. It is, because you're going from trying to do everything yourself. So we talk about what the owner's role is, and it says WAO. You know what that means? You're working your ass off. Okay? Is that right? Nodding. I see nodding. Yes, you're working. You're working your butt off. Yes, you are. We officially have made it known. Jessica's working her ass off. Right? You're doing it all yourself. And the problem is, in order to get to the next level, you got to slow down to speed up. You got to slow down and hire people. But you're too busy working your ass off to be able to slow down and hire people. It's like, you're like Stretch Armstrong. You're just like, how do I do that? That is one of the most challenging things in business. And by the way, it's not just the paint industry. It's every business. Going from a solopreneur, from almost being really self-employed, especially if you're on tools, right? I mean, if you're really on tools, what happens if you stop working for a minute? You have no income. So you're constantly, and your brain is rationalizing, I got to go do this project because that's how I get paid. And you got to shift that mindset from you doing the project to get paid to leveraging other people. As we like to say, you're buying labor at wholesale and selling it at retail, right? You're leveraging other people to make money. So anyway, this chart, again, there's copies out there. I could spend hours on it, but it just kind of gives you a feel for how do you go. The next step is you go from working your butt off to having to transition to be a manager. How many of you think you're really great managers, by the way? Uh-oh. Nobody is raising their hands. Guys, and actually, it's good. I think as leaders, we should never think we're great leaders. We should always be working on that. But you got to believe that you can manage, that you got to believe in managing people. That's why it's scary to hire people. If you don't believe in yourself, remember on the first slide I said, do you believe yourselves as leaders? Do you believe in yourselves as managers? How many of you believe in your ability to manage and lead other people? Raise your hand. Come on, raise your hand. You all have to believe this because you're not going to get past this first level if you don't believe this. Okay? You've got to believe it, and if not, fake it till you make it. Okay? Because you know what? Nobody's really great at this. Okay? And you're better than you believe. And this is one of the challenges I think we as women have in this industry. Is I think we don't see ourselves as leaders. I think we sometimes don't see ourselves as managers. What's the word for it? Imposter syndrome or something like that. But I think it's really true. We don't give ourselves enough credit. We've got to give ourselves some grace. You guys have to, I think feminine energy does a better job of managing than masculine energy. But it's hard because really, management and leadership is really a masculine energy, and it's hard for us. Shifting back and forth is sometimes challenging. I know I've had that challenge my entire career. I don't know about you guys, but anyway, this is a little bit about the scaling model and how you move through it. This is what businesses kind of look like in that scaling model. Startup is where, in the beginning, you're really just trying to get customers, launch the business. You're trying to add, when you build up, you're trying to add customers. You're really trying to get to a sustainable spot where you're sustainably above break even all the time. Ooh, there's another number we'll talk about. And then getting up to that enterprise level. All right, what's this business model thing? She's going to talk about the business model. Do you guys have an idea when I say business model, what that really means? It's like, it's kind of a set of numbers, to be honest with you. Let's talk about what numbers are important. This is participation again. All right, somebody yell out a number that's important. Profit? Did I hear that? Oh, that's a good one. That probably is the most important number. Oh, look, it's the first one on the list, too. Profit. Yay. What's another number that's really important? Controllable expenses. Okay. How about revenue, right? Income. Okay, so revenue and expenses. KPIs. That's what I call metrics, key performance indicators. Oh, and we call this, there's a different kind of profit, owner's discretionary profit we'll talk about. And then there's this one last thing that's really important. It starts with a C. You know what it is? No, cash. Cash, you have to have cash in your business. Guys, and it's important to know how much cash you have and have the right amount of cash in your business. I've seen very, very profitable businesses almost go out of business because they didn't have enough cash at the right time. So not to scare you. There's plenty of things to be scared of in business, but got to have cash. There's an old adage, whether you're rich or you're poor, it's always nice to have a little cash. Another fun saying, volume, meaning your volume. Volume is vanity. Profit is sanity. And cash is king. Or queen, as we kind of say. Measurement is the key to success. We're getting into these numbers things. So we have these KPIs, key performance indicators. What are they? Is everybody comfortable? Do you know what a KPI is? Or does anybody not really know? All right. This is what they are. It is a numerical measure. Okay, so it's always a number. It's giving you an indication of how a particular system is operating or is performing, okay? Key performance indicator, that's what it is. Now, what is this system you talk about, Tara? What systems? We'll talk about that in just a second. In addition to a key performance indicator, there's something we call key success factor, okay? The difference is a key success factor is actually an activity. It's a critical activity that is a factor in the success. Sometimes you'll hear this. Have you ever heard the term best practice? That's a key success factor, right? Something that we know makes that system work really good. All right, so those are important. We talk about you cannot manage what you cannot measure. It's hard to manage things that you can't measure. All right, so 4 core business KPIs. So we're going to talk about, these are the core ones. We've already talked about them because I asked you what numbers were important. Well, guess what? The 4 core business KPIs, and this is true for every business on this planet, not just painting, okay? Revenue, expenses, profit, and cash, okay? I don't care, like I said, I don't care if it's Procter & Gamble or your kid's lemonade stand. This is true for every business, okay? 7 diagnostic KPIs. Now, these are more specific to our business, but not this first one. This is also true for every business. The most important diagnostic metric in this business is gross profit margin. Gross profit, okay? We're going to talk about what that is. We call it MAMA. I call gross profit MAMA. You might call it MAMA. What happens when Mama's not happy? Nobody's happy. It's true in your business too. If your gross profit margin is not right, then your business isn't happy. And you shouldn't, as a coach, first question I would ask you is, and I help you ascertain is, where's your gross profit margin? Is it where it needs to be? Because if it isn't, working on other things in your business does not make sense. Because if you're not, gross profit is project profitability. It is are all of your projects profitable? If your projects aren't profitable, spending more money on marketing is not going to make that better. Improving your sales process is not going to make it better necessarily, unless you can use that to raise your price, right? The problem is if you don't fix this and you actually try to grow your business, you're just digging the hole faster and deeper. Okay, so you got to be making money on every project. So that's the key. Number of leads, meaning how many leads are you getting? Okay, so 0 is not a good number for leads, right? Like getting 0 leads would be bad. So you've got to get leads into the business in order to be able to grow or to be able to sustain. So marketing, the leads measure how your marketing effectiveness is. Okay, these are KPIs, key performance indicators. These are systems. The lead conversion is a measure of your sales effectiveness. Okay, so can you take a lead that comes in, turn it into a quote, right? And turn that quote into a project, right? A buying customer, right? Because you can do all the marketing in the world, but if you can't turn that lead into a project, paying project, it doesn't do you any good. Weekly production. How much can you produce every week in your business, right? We talk about that, right? It's your production effectiveness. I have all kinds of stories about very even high volume businesses losing track of weekly production and not being able to hit a goal. I'm going to tell you what, if you leave here with one piece of really good advice from me, figure out what you need to produce every week and strive to hit that, and then strive to grow it. And that's an important number in your business. And then revenue per head count. Okay, so we're going to talk about how much revenue can you do per staff, meaning staff is not painters, okay? Anybody who's not painting, I don't care if they're in the field or they're in your office, they're overhead, right? So a production manager who's not picking up a brush is overhead. Somebody who's doing scheduling in your office is overhead. Your salesperson is overhead, right? How much revenue per staff member are you doing? There is a metric for that. There's a benchmark. Healthy business is doing somewhere around, and it'll ebb and flow, but around $480,000 a year per staff member, or about $40K a month. Okay, so it's a good benchmark. I look at a business and I say, okay, I was coaching somebody this morning, and he's at 5 people, right? So I have 5 people. How much volume should he be doing if he was super efficient? About 2.5, right? Maybe a little under. They're not quite there yet. They're about $1 million. They're going to be about $1.8 million this year. So what does that mean? He should be able to continue growing without adding any more staff. Now you got to invest ahead of that, right? You can't get to 2.5 and then add 5 people. It doesn't work that way. You got to add that ahead of your growth. So revenue per head count on staff, and then also revenue per head count on painter. Now this depends on what you're charging per hour on average. And I don't mean your labor rate. I mean, if you take you have a $5,000 project and it's 100 hours, Okay, that's your charge per hour. Based on that, I say a good number is that you should be hitting about 150, 170. I've got folks that are at 200,000 per painter per year. Okay, and they're charging closer to $100 an hour. So you should know where you're at. And then callbacks, whether you get Google reviews or you send out surveys, the one thing you can measure in your business is how often do you get called back by a customer to go fix something after that project was supposedly done. And it's something you should track, right? It is truly the measure of your quality assurance. If you're constantly getting callbacks, it's expensive. One, bottom line is you've already been paid for that project. Now you got to send somebody back. Two, the most expensive thing you could do is not go back because you really piss off the customer at that point, right? But you've already, so we want to make sure that we're not leaving things undone, on a project, having to go back, finding out 2 weeks later that you got to go back and fix a holiday or there's something going on. And now you really got to paint a whole wall again because, it's already dried and there's no way to fix it. So that's just your measure of quality assurance. And then there's this thing called, it's an accounting measure. It's called days of sales outstanding. I'm not going to get into that today, but it has to do with how fast are you collecting money. How many of you collect always religiously right at the end of a project? How many of you wait, maybe invoice, you're a little late, you should. Like I have in fact, again, it was the gentleman I was coaching this morning. They are impressive. They're actually impressive on their AR. Most impressive business I've ever coached. They're at 1.7 days. Like they collect every project like at the end of the project. Now that'll tell you something. He doesn't do a lot of commercial. I'll tell you right now. But on residential, they literally are like, we're collecting, that on the project, and they're very religious about it. And it's good. That helps your cash flow, by the way. All right. So I'm going to talk about 2 or 3 here that are super important. We're going to talk about gross profit. We're going to talk about lead conversion. We're going to talk about weekly production numbers and callbacks. Those are some of your most important things. Let's talk about systems real quick. This is the key business systems. Now, it's interesting. Again, these business systems exist in every business. Once again, whether it's Procter & Gamble or your kid's lemonade stand, the bottom line is these are all in everyone's system. You have strategic leadership and management systems, the one on the left there, the head, that's your thinking part of the business. That's when you make decisions, when you plan, when you write your business plan, when you're when you're making decisions in your business. You can see, I call it lead generation systems. And you see the word marketing above that. You know why I call it lead generation instead of marketing? You know why? Because all of you have an opinion about what marketing is. Marketing is a lot of things. But the bottom line is that is a system that has to get you leads. Whether it's networking or loving on your list or going to a home show or mailing out postcards or putting up yard signs. It's whatever gets you leads into your business in that system. And you've got to know how many leads you're getting, and you've got to be able to get leads. Remember, what's a bad number for leads? 0, right? And we just say, that's the only bad number for leads. 0 leads is a bad number. And then your lead conversion system, okay? What would we call that? We call that sales, right? You know where I got this? You know why I started doing this was, it turns out that people who are really attracted to working in senior care, my Comfort Keepers franchises, hated the word sales. I think they actually hated making money, to be honest with you. They were very, very magnanimous people. Awesome. In fact, I actually had a franchise group. They were doing about $2.5 million, and they were a nonprofit. All of the money they made went to run orphanages in Africa. I'm serious. They were like, literally, we're a nonprofit. Now, that is not true in painting. This is why I love painting. That's why I love my painting franchises at Fresh Coat. Everybody here wants to make money. But it was funny because they hated the word sales. It was like, we're not in sales. Yes, you are. You're in sales. You're selling this. No, we're not selling anything. We're helping people. Well, it's really true. We are too. We're helping people, aren't we? We're helping them achieve what they want. So anyway, I stopped calling it sales and marketing. I said, okay, we're just going to really get this down to Lowest common denominator, lead generation and lead conversion. And then service delivery is operations, financial and administration systems, right? Gotta collect money, and you gotta pay other people, and you gotta acquire resources. And I think one of the most important things on here, you notice what's on the bottom? What's that word on the bottom? Data. What does data really mean? Money, numbers, data. Information is money, right? Information is what helps you sets you apart from other people. Having information. Okay. This is how my brain operates. I'm not going to go into these details. This is the same chart and the same systems in a lot more detail. So if you could look in my brain, that's what you'd see on the inside of it. That's how I think about the business. So just wanted to scare you. But the bottom line is, how does money flow through the systems? I know, it's like it's giving you a headache. It's like, oh, there's all the details. We go from head, we go from planning to getting leads, to converting the leads, to doing the work, to getting paid. And that's the way the business model works. And then we get paid, and we gather over here on the far right side, we generate information, which we send back to the head, to your brain, right? And you make decisions. And based on those decisions, you make changes or you keep doing the same thing. All right, that's a long way of getting around to saying we need to talk about numbers. Okay. Our key success factors. Remember those things, those actions, and some known best practices for these 4 key KPIs. That's what I want to give you. All right, so gross margin, gross profit, mama. In order to improve gross profit, there's really only one thing you can do, and that's price it correctly. Okay? I would say this, like, if you don't price a project correctly, there's only so much you can do in operations to make that up. Okay? You really can't fix it in operations. Now, you can price something correctly, and you can totally screw it up in operations. Okay? You can screw up good profitability with your operations, but you can't fix bad pricing with good operations. I'm sorry. It doesn't work that way. So if you're not pricing your projects correctly, you're pretty much screwed, okay? You gotta get the price right in the beginning, okay? And the only way you really know, so that means, what does that mean? It means how many of you are using production rates? How many, okay, ooh, that's a really scary number. Right, okay, well, how many of you use a production rate that goes in this order? I measure, I multiply the measurement by a production rate that gives me a certain number of hours it's going to take in labor and how much material. And then I mark that up to get a price. Okay, I go from hours and materials to price. So how many of you are doing that? Let's raise your hands. Okay, that's good. That's important, okay? That's a point of truth. We're going to talk about that in a second. So first of all, you got to price correctly using a production rate. And then you got to job cost. How many of you are religiously job costing every project? Not enough of you. You should. One lesson I've learned, the benefit of working with some larger organizations, some larger businesses, I see what they do. You know what? One behavior that I can say is religious with every business I've worked with that's over 4 or 5 million. Guess what they do every day and every week? They job cost every project. It never goes away. Okay? The bigger you get, the more important it is for you to job cost every project. Okay? And I have tools. If anybody needs tools for job costing, let me know. I will send it to you because it's so important for you to job cost. I will make sure you have a tool to make sure you know. And if you're not sure how to do it, at the end of this day, I'm going to give you my email. And everyone that's in this room, please email me. I will spend a minimum of an hour with you, okay? All of you, any of you that want it, to go over these numbers, to understand your numbers better. It is so important for you to be successful, and I want you to be successful. I will take time and make sure that you understand what we're doing, because this is the most important thing in your business. You got to get the profit right. You got to get the job costing right. You got to get your gross margin right. Okay. All right, I'm off my soapbox on that. Then the next thing is you got to generate leads, right? Doesn't matter if you're pricing it right if you don't have any leads. So there's a couple things that are really critical. how many of you have over 100 people on your list of names of people you've serviced before? Good. How many of you people have more than 500 names? Oh, good. How many of you have more than 1,000 names? There's a few hands up. Okay. More than 5,000 names? Not sure yet. That's great. How many of you send something to every name on your list that's active at least once a month? Got 1, 2, good, 3. That's good. You should. Guys, the most valuable thing in your business is your list. And it is and I'll show you there's some numbers on your table and we're going to talk about it. And you're going to ask me a question like, how does somebody run a $7 million business without spending any money on marketing? You know what they're doing? They're talking to their list. They're getting repeat and referral business, okay? You're going to ask me that, and that's going to be the answer. Okay, on top of that, so reactivating and talking to your list, operational marketing. When I say operational marketing, do you know what that means? What do you think it means? Somebody throw it out. I'm just going to get, what are some operational marketing upsells? That's a good one. Yard signs. Okay, so you're on a project and you put a yard sign out. That's operational marketing. Door hangers, canvassing. Okay. Logo on your company vehicle. Ding, ding, ding. That's a good one. Yeah, these are all things that are operational marketing. They're involved in they go with your operations, right? So so you got loving your list, operational marketing. I call it the hierarchy of lead gen. It's like, okay, before you go to spend a lot of money on postcards and Google and marketing, you should be doing these things. If you're not building those foundations, those are the things that take the money you spend and create a force multiplier, right? So when you go spend some money on, and you may need to, you're going to go spend money and spend some good money on Meta or on Google or on LSAs or on postcards. If you're doing these things at the bottom, it takes those and actually increases the value of that money you spend. Marketing is very intertwined. It's all a choice. Good news is you're owners and you get to make choices. Every choice has a consequence, but it's a consequence if you do it intentionally, it's your choice. And that's the beauty of being your own boss, right? You get to make choices. There's some people are gung-ho and will always drive their wrapped vehicle all the time and wear logo wear, and that's their choice. And there's a benefit to it, and there's a reason why you might not want to do that. So, but good news is we're deliberate. And that's good. That's what we want to make sure we're doing things deliberately. Lead conversion, sales. There's some key things. Speed to lead. Okay, guys, if you're not answering your phone, if you don't have your phone answered live 24/7, okay, in some form or fashion, if you're not getting to form fills in at least 5 minutes, okay, or I want to have a party with you, and what we're going to do is we're going to go to the bank, we're going to get an ATM, we're going to go take out, $5,000 or $10,000 if you have it. We're going to go in your driveway, we're going to lay the money down there, we're going to get some lighter fluid, and we're going to pour it on the money, and we're going to light your money on fire. Because if you're spending money on marketing, or even if you're not, if you've done all this action to get the phone to ring, thanks to the fact you have the greatest quality, you've got 10,000 5-star Google reviews, and people just can't wait to call you, but you're not answering the phone, okay, and you're rationalizing. I know, I've heard this. Oh, I just 9 to 5. I don't answer the phone after 5, okay? I'm serious. How many of you answer your phone? How many of you answer your own phone? You personally answer your own phone? Really? How do you so what happens when you're on the phone with your best girlfriend and the phone rings? Do you stop and answer it? Yeah, gotta go. You're in church? You answer the phone in the pew? Okay. I don't. Right? You're at a client's house. You're doing because you're probably if you're answering your own phone, you're your own salesperson, right? Okay, now you're with Mrs. Smith. You're walking the house, and your phone rings. So do you answer it? Because that's a dilemma, right? Who's the most important person? Mrs. Smith or the phone? They're both equally important. So how do you reconcile that? An answering service, exactly. Let it have a rollover. If you want to answer your phone, great. But set it up so that if you don't get to it in 2 rings or 3 rings, it rolls to somebody that does answer it. Okay? Because the difference between it not getting answered and somebody of lesser quality than you answering the phone, which is what you're thinking, the answering service can't answer the phone as good as I can. You're right. But they're good enough. And here's the bottom line. Not answering it and letting it go to voicemail. You remember what I said? You remember that party? Okay, let's go get $10,000 out of the ATM and set it on fire because that's what you're doing. By the way, how many calls do you get after hours? What? A few. Okay, so, I had that benefit of being in a big franchise system for a long time, and we recorded lots of calls, like thousands of them, and we literally listened to them. So did you know that, almost over 40% of the leads, and I'm not talking about calls, 40% of actual leads listening to the call, because they were going to a required answering service, right, come in after 5 and on weekends. 40%, okay, over 40. Calls that come in at 1 and 2 in the morning are actually leads. Okay? They're not. People do call. Now, are you going to answer the phone at 2 in the morning? No. You better not. Right? But somebody should. You know what has another benefit? If somebody's answering your phone 24/7, when you go and you do your Google business profile, guess what? You get to say 24 hours. Which means that when some insomniac is looking for a painting company at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're going to pop up. Guess who's not? The person who says, I'm only open 9 to 5. They don't pop up because they're not open. Okay. So there's some benefits. All right. Weekly production numbers. Okay. So speed to lead. And then I said, presenting the quote live. Sales process. How many of you feel like you have an awesome, great, fantastic sales process? Ooh. Come on, somebody's got to have a great, fantastic sales process. You have one. How many of you present in the home on the spot every time? Nobody? 80? Okay, how many of you do it sometimes? Okay, that's better. Sometimes present in the home. Okay, again, numbers play out. So what do? You email it later? What do you do? Okay, you just gave up you're probably giving up 10 or 12 points in closing rate. Quite honestly. Again, guess what party we're going to have? We're going to go get another 10 grand out of your bank account and go light it on fire because that's what you're doing. All right, so, but, why do I say that? I know from 10 years of analyzing numbers and seeing the difference between people who do this and don't do this under the same flag, we know what this means in terms of the business. Having somebody who wasn't doing it change to doing it and seeing the numbers go up, the data tells us we know these are important metrics. All right. Any questions about that? The bottom line is, are we responding to customers quickly? It's about I'm going to steal from one of the office things. What's the easy button? Is that Staples? I don't remember which one. Like, are we pressing the easy button for our customers, or are we pressing the easy button for ourselves? If you're pressing an easy button for yourself, you're barking up the wrong tree. If you're pressing an easy button for your customer and not wasting their time. By the way, I'm our customer. Okay? I'm a 45 to 65-year-old professional female homeowner, right? At one time, either single head of household or, partnered head of household, whatever, right? I make, regardless if I have a husband or not, I make the decisions, even though I may pretend not to. Oh, I have to talk to my husband. I'm not even married, but that's okay. I'd have to talk to my husband. Okay, so the bottom line is I'm our customer. I'm like the avatar of our customer. And you know what pisses me off more than anything? When people waste my time. And when you don't present something to me on the spot, you're wasting my time. So a virtual may not be wasting my time. If I'm okay with that and it speeds up stuff, I might actually like that more. I don't know, right? And I don't like to buy from people I haven't met, especially if they're going to be in my home and messing with my stuff. So, again, how comfortable am I with you, right? I'm not buying just paint. I'm not buying a color. I'm buying you, so that's an important important question. We're going to talk about something. This is new for me. I talk about points of truth in your business. I said, and the reason I told you, I said, I don't have numbers, so I'm not going to tell you something because I don't have a point of truth. If I have a point of truth, which is numbers, right? Then I'll say, hey, we know from numbers that this is the case. But I want to talk about points of truth in our business. And we've got to build, the more you can build things in your business off of points of truth, the more stable your business is, the better your business decisions are. What are some common points of truth in our business? Okay, the first one is measurement. And that ATB is the area to be painted. Okay, ATBB, right? Area to be painted. Can we all agree that a 12 by 12 by 8 room has 384 square feet of wall space, generally, give or take a window or a door, right? 144 square feet of ceiling. Okay, so we all agree. That's a point of truth, right? Your painters can't argue with you. That's 308, that was a 144 square foot ceiling and it was a 384 square feet of wall. There's no argument. It's a point of truth, right? And that's why we start our quotes and our estimates off of points of truth, right? We measure. And then what do? We apply production rate, right? Now, in your business, your production rate might be slightly different than Michael's. Where you may have calculated your own production rates. You may be using the PCA's production rates, which are, how many years back do the PCA production rates go? Years. Really production, how fast, our speed, how long it takes to paint a wall hasn't really changed in 30 or 40 years much. There is some technology that might have sped us up a little bit, but the bottom line is they really haven't changed. But whatever you're using should be a point of truth in your business. This is don't change your production rates every day. Your production rates are your production rates, unless you just figure out they're wrong. And then that calculates hours, and that calculates how much material you need, right? So we've got a point of truth. Now I can judge my teams. As you grow and scale, I have painters, right? Are they able to hit those production rates or not? Now, as long as you measured correctly and you applied a consistent production rate, now you're judging your team on a point of truth. Okay? If you move these things around, if you don't always measure, if you guess, which a lot of people do. Now, I've seen some people who are really good at guessing. Like, my fresh coat people know Brian Santos. That man can walk in this room and tell you the exact dimensions of this room within inches. He's been doing this. He's a 4th generation painter, and he's been painting for over 50 years now. He says 40, but he's older than he looks. Okay. But, the bottom line is when he says, okay, this room's 12 by 12 by 8, he's right, usually. But you know what? He still measures for the customer. He sees it. But the bottom line is that you've got this, you got your measurement, you got your production rate. And if those are consistent, your team knows what they're being judged by. If you move those around or keep changing them, or you don't have them, or you're guessing, then you're not doing your team a service, right? Now, how do you hold your people accountable to speed or production rate, right, Jessica? Like, if you don't have a good production rate, we're just, that's important, isn't it? Yeah. I'm messing with Jessica. Jessica and I go a long way. We live next to each, like literally next to each other, sort of Dayton and Cincinnati, but. So that's point of truth. There's another point of truth, and that's raw leads. How many leads are you getting in your business? And I'm going to say this because there's an important KPI. It's your conversion rate, okay? And that's, so your raw leads is how many leads do you get? How many of you know how many leads you get? Now, do you know how many leads you get, or do you know how many quotes you did? Both. Hopefully the answer is both. Okay. All right. I'm going to take a few minutes here. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because I want you to have fun. We're going to talk about financial statements, KPIs, and job cracks. On your table, there's not quite enough for everybody. Maybe you're going to see something that looks like this. Data. We've got... I have the benefit. It was funny when I went to work for APPC, Brandon looks at me and he goes, we don't have numbers. They're all independents. They don't have numbers. And I said, I'll fix that. All right, so I happen to have a benefit in that I have about 24 businesses that are in what we call high performance peer groups, and they're required to turn, as a member, they're required to turn in numbers. Now, I have a lot more numbers than these, but these are some really important ones. So what I want you guys to do really quick, and if Michael will give me make sure I don't run over too much here. I want you guys to take a look at these numbers at the table. We'll spend just a few minutes, like a couple. And I want you to come up with a couple questions. When you look at these numbers, what do you see? What's the question that comes to mind? What this is, there are 22 businesses. What you're seeing is what they have done through the end of August of this year and what they did through the end of August last year. So that's what 24 and 23 are. The dollar change, okay, how much they've grown or retracted since last year. The percent of change, how much they're up over or down over last year. And then what percent residential and commercial they are, if they know it. If there's a hole, if there's an empty spot, it means they don't track it. We're working on that. Anyway, so then there's gross profit percentage. Okay, what's their gross margin? How much they're spending on marketing as a percentage of their business. And there's a capture rate. Capture rate is how many of every lead that comes in, how many turn into quotes. Okay? And when I started with the peer groups, almost nobody, there was only one person tracking it. Now we've got more people tracking it. There's still a few that aren't, but they're working on it. Their closing rate, their average project size, and then that 24 pace is it's just a math formula that says if they continue on the pace they're at, they're going to do about this amount. To give you an idea of what the annual volume is of those. But quick, each table, come up with a couple questions. I'm going to go around. I'll just ask. Whoever the most senior person at your table is will be the table leader. So take just a second, look at those, come up with a question or two. By the way, I know most of the answers. If anybody stumps me, then I'll give you an extra hour of coaching. So come up with a fun one. Yes, this is an exercise. So as a table, look at that, come up, what jumps into your mind is like, you should be looking at these numbers going, oh my, I've got this question. Looking at these numbers, I want to know the answer to this. Like, how did they do this? Or why are they so bad at this?
My question was, the top one.
Yes.
It just sticks out. They have obviously the most growth, but they're only spending 0.05% on
Yep.
their marketing. So how are they generating their leads?
All repeat and referral business. The word of
Okay.
mouth. It's they're in a unique market. I will say that, but they actually, and how they grew, because you're probably wondering that, is they added about 40% to their workforce this year because they weren't able to get through their whole pipeline last year. They're in a very seasonal area. So,
Gotcha.
but it is repeat referral. They reactivate. They call and it's a service that needs to be done. They have to paint, do a lot of log homes.
Gotcha.
Okay, so it's an area. They're in Jackson, Wyoming, by the way. All right, over here. I've got some questions. Did that answer it? All right. What's the question?
So I would like to know more about the I level there, the
Yep.
14% marketing. They have a small job average amount of 3,900,
Yep.
but yet they are about to 2x their company from $500,000 to just over $1 million. How do they have that much marketing money and that little of job size, but yet they're still 2xing?
Okay, so this person is in his second full year of business, so he has 0 repeat referral business, and he is intentionally spending. So in his first year of business, which wasn't quite a full year, he did he did 449,000.
Yeah.
And now in his first almost full year of business, he's already at 716. He's spending because when you're trying to grow a business and you don't have a base, you got to spend more. Make sense?
That makes sense.
Yeah, great question. Absolutely fantastic question, actually. Oh, Michael, we're going to go over here and then
We'll see if this makes sense. But what I recognize is the letter U. They have the highest gross profit, but they lost
some volume.
volume. So I'm curious to know what their net profit was. Did their net profit go up even though they lost?
At this point, it has not. They are making up ground. What happened to this company was they took their eye off the ball. They do a lot of postcard mailing. And what they didn't realize, there was 2 things happening in this company. I happen to coach them, so I know them very well. And the bottom line was, and it was interesting. So their marketing company had a glitch and they stopped sending out postcards. They send like 10,000 a month in postcards. Well, anyway, they didn't go out for 3 months. And there was another problem they had. They got down to one salesperson. This is a company that did $4 million last year. Okay. And they had one salesperson. So they couldn't even get to all the leads. So what happened was they had production capacity, but their guys were sitting idle because they couldn't get their pipeline dwindled to the point where they couldn't produce enough every week. I'm gonna tell this story. This is a great question because this is why I tell you need to look at your weekly production. So I met with these guys, started coaching them in March, and I said, "What's your goal for the year?" And they said, "6.2 million." I said, "Where are you at?" We're at 600. At the end of March, they were at 680,000 maybe. And I said, "Do you think you're going to hit 6.2?" And they're, "Oh yeah, we're going to hit it." I said, "Okay. Do you realize you're going to have to average 145,000 a week for the rest of the year to get to 6.2 million?" And they went, I said, "Where are you at? What did you do last week?" 35,000. So they were 110,000 off. I said, "You got a lot of ground to make up." Anyway, they revised their goal. It's not going to be, they're trying to get back to, and they're actually on track right now. Last week they did 167,000, 167 in a week, okay. So they had the people to do it. They had to get the pipeline. They now have 4 salespeople back on the ground. So anyway, this is how fast something can get out of control if you take your eyes off of the numbers. Isn't that a great story? Oh, sure. And I promised I'd go over here, but I'm going to stay right here just a second, quick.
On M, they didn't have much change from 2023 to 2024. They're doing no marketing or 0% spending on marketing, but they're projected to like almost double.
No. They're going to end up they'll end up about 4 million. They're on pace to do 4 million for the year.
So these aren't final numbers.
No, this is through August.
Okay, gotcha.
So yeah, that's what's happening. So does that answer that question for you? It's really just about, so what you're talking about M, right?
Yeah.
So they're up 5.9% year over year. And at 4 million, they'll end up about 5 or 6% up over last year. They're on pace to stay there. He's all commercial. That's why he doesn't have a lot of marketing spend.
Okay. There was like missing.
Yeah.
Okay.
He doesn't have those numbers in there because he doesn't track it. But I happen to know he's almost 100% commercial. But I won't put the numbers in unless they're accurate. So they're not, he doesn't track it, God forbid. Probably because he's almost 100% commercial. Now you had a question.
We're hoping you'll share your epic secrets with us. We're looking at and this company's been spending 14% in their marketing budget. They've had almost 60% growth, and we were wondering what type of marketing they're doing to be so effective to where they've got almost 60% growth.
Oh, it's a good question. What kind of marketing is he doing? He does spend money on Google and Facebook. His largest source of leads is Facebook. His second largest source of lead is door to door. They do canvassing. He does canvassing. He came from his background of canvassing. And his second largest source of lead is door knocking. Not door hanging, door knocking.
Amazing.
Okay, I got 2 or 3 guys that do door knocking. Hi, Mrs. Smith. Can I, do you have a painting project you need to do? I notice your house needs some painting. Can we paint your house? Who else? Any other questions? I think we covered quite a bit. Burning questions, going once, twice, third. Was it fun to look at those numbers? Hey, isn't it fun to look at everybody else's numbers? Okay, you don't want to look at your own, but it is fun to look at other people's numbers. These are real numbers. Did this help you benchmark your own business? Okay, yeah. And by the way, you're welcome. So keep those. If it helps you, that's great. Okay, I'm going to jump ahead. I don't have that much left, Michael. And we did start late, so I apologize. Okay, that's helpful. All right, there's another sheet, something that we want to always do. And if you were here last year, we went over this. Let me turn that off. Okay. All right, guys. I want to say planning for your own success, using your numbers. It all starts with you, right? And I want to talk about, I want to run through an exercise that you can take home and do for yourself. It's great for your business planning. It's called, I like to say, making the numbers working for you. It's tying together on your table, there is a worksheet that looks something like this. It says tying it together. Looks like this. Hopefully there's enough of them on your table that you can each take one. And you'll notice that the first thing on there is ask you what your goal is for income. Right? Try not to step on that. How many of you guys think that way? How many of you guys start your business planning by deciding how much money you want to make next year? You should all do this. If you're not doing that, what are you doing? Are you just saying, I think I can do this much revenue? You're winging it. You're winging it. That's honest. Thank you for being honest. So is everybody. Okay, so we're tying it together. I want to walk this through with you just so you know how to do the math, okay? And then we'll be pretty much done. Okay, guys. How many of you made $100,000 last year or are going to make $100,000 this year for independent owner income? If you don't mind sharing. A few? Okay. How many of you would like to make $100,000? Okay, all right. That's good. Free and clear. And if you're working for somebody else, duly noted. Okay. But, all right, so if you want to make $100,000, how do we get there? Right? Remember what we said, we control our business, right? Right? We control it. And if you write a plan, you can make it happen, right? You said you could believe that. You believe in yourself as a leader. You believe in your ability to control your business, so we're going to do that. So if you want to make $100,000, we're going to write a plan to get there. How does that look? So how much sales will it take to do 100,000? Well, that depends. What's your average owner's discretionary profit? For the sake of this exercise, we're going to say it's 20% because it really should be. Okay? You should be at least 20%. Now, if you're big scaled and you have a lot of overhead, you might be closer to 15. Funny thing, as you get bigger in scale, your percentage of profit tends to drop a little bit, but you're still taking more money to the bank. And the good news is we're taking it to the bank and depositing it, not lighting it on fire, like we are in our earlier things. So if you're at a 20% owner's profit and you want to make 100,000, you back into that by saying, I divide 100,000 by 20% and I get 500,000. It's math, okay? Math. Don't argue with math. Math always wins. That's why I hate math, because it always wins. So now we know how much revenue we need, right? So once we know how much revenue we need, what else do we need to know? Right? You got the worksheet in front of you. So the question is, how many painters do I need? How many projects will I need? How many quotes am I going to need to do? How many leads am I going to need to get those quotes, right? Does that make sense for everybody? You realize we can back into all these numbers, right? Okay. The right way. This is the right way of backing into things. I thought of you when I knew I was going to say that. I thought there are certain numbers you don't want to back into, like how many hours that project is going to take. You don't back into hours. You always work forward from hours. All right, so how many painters to do 500,000? If you're averaging about 150,000 a painter, you're going to need to have 3 to 4 painters full-time all the time. You may have to hire 10 to have 4 because they turn over, but the bottom line, every week you're going to need like 3 to 4 painters working full-time. Okay? It might go down a little bit if you can do 200,000 per painter and they're really efficient. You might use less or you might use more if you're not charging that much. But the bottom line is you're going to need 3 to 4. How many projects is that going to be? Well, that depends on your average project size, right? Now, you looked at that sheet. I mean, those projects ranged in from like 3,500 to 22,000, I think, right? So it really depends, but it's whatever's in your business. But if we had a 3,500 average project size, we're going to have to complete 143 projects, right? We could break that down further. How many weeks in a year are there? 52, right? So we're going to have to do somewhere around 3 projects a week to get there, okay? How many quotes am I going to need to go on to get 143 projects? Well, that depends, right? What's my closing rate, right? So we're going to divide the number of quotes needed by the closing rate, or how many projects divided by the closing rate. So if I need 143 projects and I have a 50% closing rate, I'm going to have to go on 286 quotes. Make sense? Is that math work in everyone's mind? Does anybody have trouble wrapping your head around that? I want to know. It's okay. But if you don't get it. So, but if I only have a 30% close rate, right? I still need the same 143 projects, but I'm going to have to go on 476 quotes. Now, what sounds like a lot of work, doesn't it? So why would you want to improve your closing rate? Is it worth working to improve your closing rate? Exactly. I mean, so that's one of the reasons we work on our sales process, and we do everything in our power to improve our closing rate, short of discounting every time, you know. How many leads am I going to need to be able to go on? Let's just assume it's 286 quotes, right? Well, that depends on my conversion rate. For every lead that comes in, for every 10 leads that come in, how many turn into quotes? If for every 10 I get 8, you guys notice on that sheet, there's a wide variety, right? We have some people that are at 97%. I got somebody at 42%. That's real. If you don't know this number in your business, again, we're lighting money on fire and I can tell you, if you think you're getting to 100% of your leads, you're not. You are not. You're lying to yourself, okay? You're not. If you're not tracking this and you don't know the number, you don't really know what you're getting to. But those that do, are you at 100%? 95, that's a good number. But 95 is, it's what you should be striving for. So at 85, we'll give you a little grace. You got to go out and buy or scrounge up 337 leads. Okay, leads cost money more normally, right? Unless you're the top, unless you're just doing everything repeat and referral, but they still cost you something. All right, so if you happen to have to do 476 quotes, you got to go get 560 leads. Do you see how the inefficiency in sales, is going to get you to that? All right? Anyway, that tool is yours to take. If you need help with it, I'm available. Just to remind you, you want to make the business model work for you. You want to invest in your people. You got to invest in customer acquisition. You got to create and document replicatable systems and processes. And you need to most importantly, invest in yourself. So anything possible, if you believe it, you can achieve it. And if you have any questions or if you want to know more, you can grab me afterwards. This is my email. And I said, for all of you as business owners, if you want to spend an hour with me going over your numbers, email me at this address, and I will spend that. Some of you took advantage of that last year. I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to go over this with you one-on-one and make sure that you have a good understanding. So thank you. And Michael was telling me I had to wrap, so I appreciate you guys spending that time.